afternoon. But welcome back to the Extreme Hangout. Thank you so much for coming. We are actually going to begin this session with a video message from a young lady who wasn't able to make it here today. Her name is Clover Hogan, and I'm sure many of you will be familiar with her. She's a fantastic youth climate activist from Australia, but currently based in the UK. So we have a quick message from her, and then we're going to move on to our sensational panelists for the next session. Many thanks.
Hi, my name is Clover Hogan. I'm a 23-year-old climate activist and the founder and executive director of youth nonprofit Force of Nature. We are coming up to COP27, and what that tells us is that we've been having these conversations for over 27 years. Still, decision makers in historic seats of power are failing to treat the climate emergency like an emergency. So many of the solutions at the center of global discourse are techno-utopian and don't address the root of the crisis, or they're simply tokenistic. They plaster over a much bigger problem. What COP26 showed me last year is that more than ever, we need new voices in the room. We're not going to solve the climate crisis with the same people and the same thinking that created it. So this year at COP, it's so important that we have people in decision-making spaces, not just handed the microphone, who have historically been excluded from those spaces. That includes frontline communities, BIPOC communities, the global south, the people who have contributed least to the climate crisis, yet are already paying its worst consequences. We all know that in Pakistan this year, 33 million people were displaced. And even though it's not making the headlines, 1.5 million people have also been displaced by flooding in Nigeria. We saw record-breaking droughts and heat waves across Europe. We saw more intense cyclones and hurricanes around the world. There's no doubt that the climate crisis is not something happening in the future, it's something happening today. So we need frontline communities in the room, and critically, we need the people who are inheriting the worst consequences of the climate crisis, the people who are actually going to inherit the decisions that are being made in these spaces, and that's why young people must have a seat at the table. We need radically new ideas, we need radically more transformative solutions, and that's why it's so important, again, that we don't just offer young people microphones and platforms, but we truly listen to them, we truly elevate those young people into positions of power. At COP, I also want to see recognition for loss and damage. Countries, wealthy countries, have talked about this year on year, but where is the money? Where is the support? Where is the resource to help the countries that are already living through a climate crisis today? And critically, we need community resilience. We need to galvanize action within our own neighborhoods. As the spotlight shines on Egypt, it's so important that we create spaces for connection, communication, collaboration. Again, the leaders in those positions of power have proven that they're incapable with the instruments and the tools that they have today to solve this crisis. And so we need to take power back upon ourselves. That is why Force of Nature launched climate cafes, self-organized community spaces for people to come together to talk about how the climate crisis makes us feel, to address the elephant in the room, the huge rise of eco-anxiety, the fact that more and more young people are falling into despair while the adults in our lives are ensnared in denial. We need to create spaces to come together, to be human, to be vulnerable. And then we need to have spaces to understand how to channel those normal but difficult emotions into action.
So as Clover stated quite brilliantly then, that the total reality that we are now at COP27. So these guys are all going to be here to address what is actually going on over the hill. What are they talking about, and who is preventing? Or perhaps it's the way it's being promoted, the way agendas are being created. Maybe there's something in that culture that's maybe not working because we're not seeing the results that we'd like to see today. So this evening's discussion, I know, is going to be super engaging for all of us. And welcome, everybody. Let's give them all I can't speak anymore. A great big round of applause. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this youth version of COP27, where we are at the Park Regency Hotel for Extreme Hangout, and we're going to be talking to some youth leaders, some change makers about the culture at COP, and is it toxic? Is it not opening the door for people from marginalized groups, for people who typically have not had a voice? And what is their role in changing the narrative? Because as Amber just said, you know, and as Clover said, this dialogue has been going on for over 27 years, yet we're nowhere close to achieving our goal of having emissions by 2030, achieving net zero by 2050. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen. There's so much pessimism around it. Really, it's the youth who have the most to lose here, and it's their voices that need to be heard. So what we're going to do, first of all, is I'd like for each of you to introduce yourselves, say your name, where you're from, what your background is, your interests, and then we'll start a discussion. So let's start.
Hi, I'm Pravalika. I am born in India, and then I moved to New Zealand and then to Canada, and I've been in the climate space in volunteering for different organizations. And right now I'm with Climate Youth Negotiator Program, helping young negotiators to actually be in the seat, be in the table and negotiate for their country. And yes, really honored to be here.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anita Soina. I am a 22-year-old environmentalist from Kenya. I come from the famous Maasai community. I'm so sure many of you have heard about it. I have been in the environment space since 2018. I started at the age of 18, that is after completing my high school. I just wanted to participate in contributing to solving global community problems, and that is how I found myself in the space. I have studied something totally different in communications, and I'm trying to use my communication skills and to practice my career in conservation. I'm volunteering with so many environmental related organizations, and currently working for We Don't Have Time organization as well, trying to expand my environmental journalism and trying to get to the environmental journalism space. I am the founder of Spice Warriors organization. It's a youth-led, it's a youth initiative aimed at offering climate education in schools and in rural areas, and also trying to tell the stories of great climate heroes who don't have a platform, who are not lucky to have a platform like we do, and to connect them with the necessary support. I also recently started the Soina Foundation because I realized that as much as environment is at the center of social, political, and economic issues, there are some social issues that we can try to handle when we are not handling environment conservation. Issues such as sexual reproductive health education, mental health issues, and other SDGs like quality education, gender, and yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Maybe if you could. Just testing. Okay, cool. Hi everyone. My name is Ryan. I'm 27. I'm from Lebanon. I'm also affiliated with several organizations, and that reason is because I just don't like to work in silos. My priority is to kind of tackle the food systems issues, especially food security in MENA countries that are actually suffering from political and economic reasons. And I'd like to always kind of bring about or elaborate that there are really hidden reasons that are not being discussed at COP, not only COP, other events as well, that are not being discussed here. So I always like to bring that perspective of those people who talk to me on a personal level to bring it here. So maybe I don't always represent young people like extremely, but I do like to kind of represent everybody's perspective that is not represented here. And I think that's why we're here today, because a lot of perspectives are not being represented, and that's because of the setup of how we are here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hi everyone, my name is Chiara de Sassubiotto. I'm a bit of a last-minute speaker. So I come from the Cayman Islands. I'm 18 years old, and I'm here representing Protect Our Future. We are a youth-led environmental organization that strives to implement legislation and environmental policy in the Cayman Islands.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. And an introduction to me. My name is Daphne Ewing Chow. I am a senior contributor at Forbes. And my focus is on the environment and food. And I try to connect the two in every way that I can. So I'm here at COP looking at those synergies. And of course, this is an amazing COP for me because this is the real first time that there's been a formal acknowledgement of the connection between food and climate. So it's been quite amazing. Also, something that I didn't mention is this session today is being hosted by Act4Food Act4Change, and that is a youth movement. And I'm going to actually ask Ryan if he can talk more about Act4Food Act4Change.
Yeah, Act4Food Act4Change is a youth-led campaign. It actually emerged after the United Nations Food Systems Summit. Somebody from Bangladesh actually initiated it, and we started to join as young people. And now we have people from all around the world, and we've accomplished so much. It's called Act4Food Act4Change. First of all, we started with pledges that everybody pledges to fix our broken food systems. But then we went on to having people vote on what do they want to achieve as young people. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that during this panel, but we've had more than 200,000 young people tell us what they want to fix in food systems. It's a global online campaign. We're supported by the Food Foundation and the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. So yeah, this is us.
Wonderful. And I know there's obviously been more support than ever before for youth, and youths need to be engaged in this process. And like I said earlier, there's been more of a commitment around food as well. So of course now we have the food pavilion, food systems pavilion, and we have events surrounding food. I guess there's someone involved with that, and it's truly exciting for food/climate nerds like myself and some of the others in the audience this year. So actually, for those of you who might be passionate about food and climate, what does it mean to you for this connection to have been made this year?
Okay, so for me, I'm gonna speak on the perspective of food security and climate change, because the biggest problem that we have in our countries, African countries, and especially my country, is the availability of food. Just like before, we used to fight for people to have access to clean and safe water. We are in a situation where we're fighting for people to have any kind of water because of the droughts and all that. And I grew up at a time when such things were not really a vocabulary, lack of food and lack of water and all that. But over time, it has been increasing. The number of people who are going to bed on an empty stomach are increasing every other time. So for us, it's before we even talk about the quality of the food, we are talking about the availability of any food that people can eat for them to survive. But I also can throw this back to our governments back in Africa, that we have seen countries even that are in the middle of the desert being able to produce food and are food secure. So I think African leaders should also prioritize the access to food for our own people, because you realize over time when we have seen all these climatic change effects happening and even affecting availability of food, it's something that was predicted way before. It's not something that caught us unaware. So meaning they should have prepared before to make sure that they are ready, knowing that tomorrow we have current effects of climate change and future expected that we do not know about right now. So I feel like there was a bit of ignorance about that. And the fact that most of them can put food on their table actually makes it makes them not to understand the situation. when they don't really have the connection with the people, the touch on the ground, and it's just all about our people are dying, our people are dying. Okay, give us the money, show us the money. When you are given the money, are you also prioritizing and putting it in the right place? Because that is where the discussion also needs to start from. We come here to ask for support. We come here to say that our people don't have food. But we also need to get back home and ask ourselves, if we get this support, are we going to prioritize what is really important for the people?
Very true.
I just want to make a short comment. We always think about the big picture. We always talk about the dream. Everyone talks about climate justice and everything. But what we don't realize is the basic needs that needs to be first addressed, and then we can fix all the big problems. So I'm very glad that there's a big dialogue on food and climate this COP.
Quite shortly, for me, I think, why am I really passionate about food systems in specific? We know 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions are from food systems. And we know the fastest way to tackle the climate crisis is through changing diets. Yet again, when I started to ask people to change their diets, it was not okay. People don't have accessibility to food, let alone these superfoods or alternative proteins or vegan alternatives, whatever they are, and then they can't afford them. And so hence why I'm not only speaking that food systems are a solution to the climate crisis and they should be on the agenda, I'm also speaking that even if we do include them on the agenda, what we're doing alone in food systems is not enough for people to be able to take those actions. So that's why we're here to discuss these.
Just to speak a bit about what the small island nations face about food security and climate change, we are one of the most vulnerable places on Earth. I know Daphne and I come from the Cayman Islands, so we know how close to the sea level we are, and how I always took for granted, something as simple as taking my dog on a walk along the beach, and now that's not possible anymore because the beach has just disappeared. And in terms of food security, the majority of our food, as we are an island, gets imported from the United States. And we all know how many carbon emissions come from these ships, these massive ships. And not only that, 1/3 of our tourism industry, I believe it's 1/3, comes from cruise tourism. And we know how much waste that creates. So I really think that in COP that not only small island nations should be represented, but the youth of the small island nations should also be in the conversations, I think.
Amazing. I think, sure.
Okay, so I think I also wanted to make a comment on the issue of food systems contributing to climate change, and maybe to pose this to my friends from Africa. I come from a community that depends on, we eat meat, We are Maasais, we are pastoralists. That is what we grew up doing, and for us, we do not feel as if our livestock farming is really contributing to climate change as much as to the north. But when these discussions do come up, we are also put in a situation where you are an environmentalist, you are a climate change advocate, but you are eating meat, you should stop eating meat. It becomes a problem because I now have to abandon my own culture when clearly our livestock farming is not really so industrial in the north. So I don't know how to go about it, but I think it's very hard for me to stop eating meat. It's something I have to, like I say, you don't have to be perfect. It's something you have to train yourself. You cannot wake up one day and decide that, this is, I'm going to stop eating meat and all that. And it's something I can't also go back to my community to tell people that, what you're doing is contributing to climate change. You need to stop eating meat. For us, actually, we use their animal produce as fertilizer. And it is more recommended as compared to the one that we buy from the shops. So yeah, that it's something that really makes we have this heated discussion most of the times with my friends from my community and even from my country, that when we are asked to stop eating meat because we are environmentalists and we only contribute 3% of the global emissions as Africa, less than 4%, and this less than 4% has been financed by the North, so meaning that even this less than 4% is not ours. And now I have to stop eating meat. You know, it's something that that really makes us think. You know, yeah.
I think also the issue that Anita raises is, again, it's about marginalization and inclusivity. It isn't even about meat at the end of the day. It's about the fact that there's a certain amount of privilege that comes along with this, you know, alternative protein and all of that, where, you know, the Maasai people, pastoralists, I think you guys, I think in Kenya alone for the year, like 2.4 million livestock have been lost due to the drought. And you're suffering as a result of climate change, and people are going to tell you how to regulate your behavior, and that's why your voice is so important, because it traditionally has not been. It has been a certain face that looks a certain way, that is of a certain gender, that has dictated how you're supposed to behave in order to achieve a certain outcome. And as a result, there are people in all corners of the earth who are really sort of at the point of consequences. The small island developing states were among the most indebted countries in the world because of natural disasters that were of no doing of our own. So Africa contributes 3 or 4%, the Caribbean less than 1%, and yet we're reaping the biggest consequences from climate change and climate impacts. So that brings us to why we're here today. What is wrong with COP? Why are changes not being made? We see, you know, certain faces, certain world leaders come to the stage and they give these beautiful speeches and everybody claps and people get up and they pat them on the back and nothing happens, nothing changes. What needs to happen? What's wrong with COP, and how does it need to look in order for change to occur?
Yeah, I can go. There are so many perspectives on what is wrong with COP, but I'm just going to stick with the youth perspective. Yeah, so I come from India, right? I grew up in a place where we've always found problems together. We found solutions together. We're always a community. That's how I grew up. So we talk a lot about intergenerational equity, intersectional justice, but is it reflected in COP? Like, do people actually find themselves, especially youth, find themselves being heard at COP, getting a seat at the table? No, because I'm with the Climate Youth Negotiator Program. Before we created this, we did a whole lot of research, and we realized 56% are youth in the entire world. But then when it comes to actual negotiation process, like actually asking for what we want, it's only 25% of the delegates are under 35, and only 2% of the entire 25% are in leadership roles. So we actually have to ask a question of, are we giving them the actual voice that needs to be heard? Or is it just we're giving speeches, there are climate activists who come and talk, but when it actually comes to negotiations and being part of the table, are we giving them the right voice? So I think that's the question we need to ask.
So for me, I think the biggest issue I'll speak on is in the negotiation rooms. I mean, my country, which I would like to appreciate, this time has included more youths in the party delegation with the party overflow badges and the party badges and all that. But then you realize that we have these rooms where we really want to hear what our leaders are talking about, and you have to have this special card for you to go in. So I managed to attend one of the high-level events yesterday with my friend, and we were the only youth seated in the room. The room was very full. and we only managed because we went 2 hours before and sat down, knowing that nobody will come and tell you to stand, you know, and to stand so someone else could sit. We were actually planning to ask them that, can you see anybody our age here, in case they were planning to ask us to go out. I mean, this should not be happening. I also feel like what COP should look like is we should bring people to tell their own stories. We come and tell the stories of other people, and maybe sometimes it's not felt. The urgency of the action is not felt. We need to start looking at, for example, if it's if we have, for example, in my country, we have people who are doing amazing things, even in my organization, who are having projects at the coastal parts of Kenya. They can better explain their projects, because I do not live at the coastal parts of Kenya, and I may not be able to tell their stories and how they are affected and how they contribute to marine conservation. When it comes to my community, I can better explain, maybe better than yourself who lives somewhere in a different place. So I feel COP and leaders should give a chance and support these people to come and tell their own stories. I believe that will also put more effort. Something else is that COP27 has been labeled as an African COP. To me, the geographical location of a conference does not determine if it's addressing the issues of that place. If COP27 is not going to finally address the issues of Africa that we've been raising before, then to me, it remains a COP hosted by Africa, but not a COP not an African COP. So this will be determined by after the conference. We will see if it's going to be much better. What has been said, because it's very sad that we get to hear that some discussions are the same discussions that happened let's say in COP26. If we had this discussion before, I think we should be talking about something else. We should be talking about what we have achieved. If we made a promise at COP26, and even if it's a 5-year promise, we need to know that it's been 1 year. Where are we right now? So that we know that the remaining 4 years, what else do we need for us to achieve this? So I also feel like there are so many 2080 promises, 2090, 2050, 2070 promises. We are in 2022. And we are experiencing the worst impacts of climate change already. So do we just need to go extinct for I don't know who to act? Because 2080 to me is really very far. For a country to promise that they're going to cut on emissions totally by that is a problem. Many countries promise to cut on fossil fuels by certain years, and then right now you hear that, oh, you know, the Russia-Ukraine war is now forcing us to go back to countries like Senegal to invest in coal plants. And I'm like, this is the chance for you to say that the circumstances have forced us to get out of fossil fuels or to reduce. Then why don't we invest in renewables? In my country, 90% of electricity comes from renewables. It's clean energy, wind, solar, and all that. So countries should strengthen their commitments and take advantage of the fact that we have such resources. Come to Africa, invest, and we can share the energy. I believe it's enough for all of us if we take care of what we have right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll build off of that. I'm not here to discuss any specific COP, whether past COPs, this COP, or future COPs. I think the session title says it all. We're here to discuss the format of COP and not the results of this specific COP. The issue why we made this session in the first place is because I think the idea of having a speech is the problem. We come here thinking that we're here to kind of co-work or kind of look at the progress that we've done and move forward, kind of close those gaps, look at the barriers, find solutions to those barriers. But instead, like, what is happening is we're still giving updated pledges, updated climate action plans by the same people. What we're saying is that and this is a critique to young people themselves from a young person. I think young people are falling into the wagon of older generations in terms of feeling that they have done successful effort just because they were here, they gave a speech, they wrote down a piece of paper, they sent it to negotiators. I personally have an issue with that because we are capable of much more than that, and I feel like we're looking up to the older generation a lot, and we're noticing these patterns by wearing these fancy clothes and sitting there and making these speeches and gathering and just like adding to your CV, but not really doing work. And so I think I feel like a little bit concerned about young people because they're coming into these spaces trying to look up to the older generations in those closed rooms and trying to act like them, but in their own youth-led rooms, which is the same thing, but we're just calling it youth-led spaces. And so I think that has to be addressed between young people themselves and, hey, listen, you're falling off the wagon, becoming like the older generation. The second thing I'd like to mention is, and I'll give an example here, Act4Food Act4Change, as many other youth-led organizations, not just in food systems, have produced policy recommendations that have been surveyed by hundreds of thousands of young people. For example, at Act4Food, we came up with one, like the top 10 recommendations. One of them is to actually protect food systems from the effects of war and climate change and political disruptions. No, there is no COP that ever mentioned such a policy recommendation. And I'm not saying that people have to be so brilliant and creative to be able to come up with all of these points. Otherwise, you would be amazing and you would be visiting everybody and thinking on behalf of everybody. What we're saying is that there's so many policy recommendations by others and even institutions that are not youth-led that deserve to be incorporated into these plans. And you can't do that other than sitting down with these people who are putting those policy recommendations, sitting down with the farmers, with the consumers themselves. I don't know if there's an association for consumers or whatever, but putting all stakeholders in the room and allowing them to propose their own policy recommendations is the way forward for us to sit in a venue. But when you have only government-led perspectives, and then you have policies that are being brought up by other non-governmental organizations that really deserve to be on the spot, of course it's gonna be siloed. Of course we all work in silos because it's difficult. None of you can work in complete comprehension. It's not possible because you get funding to do something specific in your own organization. I do that. Everybody does that. And if I want to say that I'm not working in silos at all, I would be lying to myself. The thing is, I can work in silos for the entire year, but when I come here and sit with you, you bring your own silos, I bring my own silos, everybody brings their own silos, and then now the table is full of every person's perspective from their own silos. And this is how you get to comprehension. And so that's why I think young people should be really concerned themselves, they should critique themselves as to why am I falling into what they're doing, but I'm doing it at COI, like the Conference of Youth. Great, COI is amazing, but I felt like it was just a youth-led segment of what is happening inside, but yet again we say it's youth-led. So what? It's youth-led. Then what? What are you doing, And so, yeah, that's what I just wanted to highlight, is that when you want to encompass all the perspectives, there's no way to do it other than including everybody's siloed thinking. So yeah, that's it.
Ryan, I think you make some really good points. Just from a perspective of a youth from a small island nation, we've done so many protests with Protect Our Future. We've done protests. We've had government meetings. I think there's been so much speaking, but there hasn't been enough action. And I think that can also be reflected in COP. How many years has COP been going on? How many years are we going to have to be having the same conversations before action is actually taken? The Caribbean is one of the areas in the world that's most affected by the hurricane season. And I know I see it every year. Hurricanes get even worse. Even more intense, and even more terrifying. Daphne, I know you can back me up on this. But honestly, I think that one of the toxic, the toxic culture at COP isn't necessarily, the fact that we aren't including more people. I think it's more about the fact that voices aren't being heard. And as a youth, I know we all feel this, that our voices can feel small at times, and especially coming from a tiny island that looks like a smudge on the world map, coming here to a giant global conference and, putting my nation in perspective to some of the great nations that are here today, it's really easy to feel like my voice is small. So I think that COP in the future really needs to amplify the youth's voice. And I know you mentioned it before that we need not just a platform, but we need to be heard and included in the discussions. Yeah.
Cool. I just want to add to Ryan's point, like how you said youth is not doing enough. But I also believe there's just no mandate or there's no global process to actually equip the youths to do enough. The skills, youth might not be equipped enough to, like, they need the skills, they need the knowledge. So I think there's a big bit of disconnection and gap between what we can actually train the youth to do. So yeah, I think it's not just the willing, but youth are willing to be part of the discussion, but it's just that they don't have the right skills or the mandate to be there.
Okay, I think to also add on what she said is that, somebody giving even a speech alone, to me, is enough. Why I say so is because climate action is very wide. You may not be able to do everything. Back in my community, I do advocacy. If you go to my social media, I wake up environment, I sleep environment, I talk climate action here and there. There is someone else who does not have that ability and maybe is able to, for example, my county coordinators, who we work together closely, we organize environmental activities on ground. Most of the young people that I even know at COP are on the ground doing the work. We have to come to COP to seek necessary and important networks that will finance our projects directly. Why I say so is because sometimes we ask for financing as let's say, as a country. But when we get back home, we realize that you are alone and your projects cannot continue. So you have to come to COP, find the necessary networks, because I know amongst us you'll find someone who can help you, not even just financially, but even capacity building. So to me, I believe that the youths are really doing their best. Why we ask why we are asking for the youth space and why we come for these conferences is not because we just want to come and follow and just try and follow up what the old people are doing. It's because we are already doing action on ground. We are coming to look for the support, and that's why you see us even begging to get into some of these rooms, because that is what climate action means to us. We want to be part of we want to sit on we want to be included on the table. And something else, I believe that older people have their own, everybody is equally important. It's not only the youth. I ran for office in the previous election, and I was telling people, it's not just about the youth, it's about everybody. Everybody has that thing that they can share with us. They have the skills maybe to negotiate. We will need that support from them. We need just transfer of leadership skills in these spaces from one generation to another. So to me, I really want to tell every youth outside there that you are doing the best that you can. You can keep adding maybe more and more to what you're doing, but you don't have to also, you don't have to put yourself in a situation where you feel like you're not doing enough. Of course, we have felt that before, but here to tell you that you are doing actually what is supposed to be done.
That's great. I have no clue what time it is. Okay.
Could we open it up?
Yes. So I just want to maybe pull out the themes that I'm hearing coming out, and then I'd like to open it up to the floor. What I'm hearing is there's too much ego, basically. It's being dictated by ego. The ones who can string together the greatest poetry are the ones whose speeches are repeated, but nothing actually happens. It's all very symbolic. It needs to be flatter, less of a hierarchy in the discussions, and there needs to be alternative forms of communication because not everybody actually is a speaker. There's artists who are making the most powerful and loud cry for change through their art, whether they're photographers or musicians or any kind of art. And usually it's success through those channels that they find their voice. So there are so many alternative methods of communication. And on that note, actually, part 2 of this session is going to be in the format of an alternative form of communication where we're going to be employing more empathy and compassion with each other and learning about one another's experiences. So on that note, I'd like to just open it up to the floor and hear what other people's thoughts are about this subject matter. Is there anybody who would like to contribute to the discussion in the audience? Yes. Just,
Hello everyone. My name is Ibrahim Inusa and I'm from the northeastern part of Nigeria on the colonial border between Nigeria and Niger Republic, where the topic of food is very important to my people and because of the climate change. So the food and the climate are very important for us, for me and for my community and the world at large. And coming down to the topic of toxic culture of CAP is that, yes, so many things are going on at the same time, and maybe you might have the first experience and you come just to the space, you're just coming into the space and you might get lost after just having to deliver what you are come to deliver. Like, yes, you are coming to deliver a speech, you are coming to deliver a position, you are coming to deliver that. Yes, and yes, I agree with all of the speakers and especially Ryan saying that, yes, everyone has silos and we are all working in different angles, so everyone is important, and as you all said, and I think the only thing missing is that we need to never underestimate the power of consistency. Like, yes, don't just relent and just keep working. We are here and yes, they are hearing us even a little, and even just a step that you just took matters. Like, you need just to move forward no matter how. So don't just say the space is need so many, I think. Don't just, what am I saying? Oh, sorry. Yeah, every little bit helps, and you're all, yes, we're all like leaders in our various communities, so don't underestimate the power, and let's just come together, and we need the power shift, and powers and the leadership are being built, and we need to build that, and right here at the Extreme Hangout. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi everyone, thank you so much. This was super interesting. My name is Steph and I'm from Brazil. I just wanted to ask, because we are talking a lot about youth, right? And we are a very different group. As you can see, we have 4 very different speakers, and we always talk about having an intersectional approach because there are a lot of issues going on and we are a lot of identities. How would you personally address that? Because the term youth is very general, and how can we get to the specifics of it? Don't know, yeah, thanks.
Okay, I hope I got your question right. So I think we talked about youth because the question was on what you feel is not wrong. So to me, I addressed what I felt was not right with the youth inclusion and the youth power and all that. But I think we need to address, we can address the problems together, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you are. We can come together to address the problem, not forgetting the needs of other people, and not forgetting that we are all not the same. We are all not the same in the society. So I think by just understanding that we are diverse, respecting diversity, but also taking in views from every individual, regardless of who they are. Yeah, I really don't have much to say on that.
Anita, I think you're completely right. And what I would say is the reason why we're grouped as, under youth, for me, I think it's because we all share the sad but common fact that we as youth will be the generation that is the most impacted by climate change ever. And it's our responsibility to come together as a youth to push for things like amplifying the youth voice and getting governments to actually take us seriously and listen to what we're saying. Yeah, that's what I had to say.
Where are we at with time?
5:02.
Okay, so okay, so do we have time for one more question? Are you okay with that? Okay. Okay, so if there's one more question, we'll take it and then move on to the second part of. Two more questions?
Oh.
Good evening and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Chizoba. First, is a toxic culture at COP preventing change, and what can we do about it? I said maybe a day before yesterday, I wanted to download the COP app to follow virtually the event, and something came to my mind. Okay, we're talking about diversity, including everyone. I am very worried about people with disabilities. Like, how can they follow these conversations? I don't know, maybe someone who is blind. I don't know. And there's another thing about speeches. I think for most of them, I haven't really seen maybe an interpreter for the speeches and all that. So are we leaving these people out of it? Are they not part of the whole group? And I want to see more of them in COP, right? When you're saying youth, is it that they are no youth or they're not involved in one thing or the other? So I just feel like they're out today. Most of them are not involved in this whole thing. So we just talk about diversity. Okay, we'll bring people from different countries, right? We'll bring people from, a whole lot of different educational backgrounds. But what about those people with disabilities? Because for me, there's a toxic culture. Toxic culture. Thank you.
That's such a strong point. And what about cultures in which communication is not amplified, like in rural communities when there isn't as much of an ability to have that kind of platform to communicate your opinions, or even cultures where youth voices are not encouraged and are actually, the whole notion of children should be seen and not heard is very common in many communities, and including the community that I grew up in, which is the island of Barbados. So it's also to look at these cultural marginalization. So that's just such a solid point you made there. There was one more question. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your perspectives tonight on this topic. I think I hear a lot of young people talking about this in the rooms that I have been in so far. I think that this is a complex question because the actual process of bringing together every nation, every state on this planet, and so many other stakeholders to have this conversation is hard. And to me, the way that COP exists right now, it exists the way with the hierarchy and the exclusion because our other systems on this planet exist this way as well. Under capitalism, colonialism, we can go on. And so, but I also think that young people are disrupting that system, and diverse communities around the world have lived outside of those kinds of systems for a long time. And so I am wondering if each of you could share a practice like from your community or from your organization that brings people together in a different way than what COP is doing right now, the way that COP exists right now. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, so as I said, I support the Climate Youth Negotiator program. So this is the first time, I believe, is we've developed this whole global process where we bring delegates, future delegates from different parts of the world together, and we train these people together. So that's probably one of the different things that we do from like COP. So we actually bring global perspectives in one room as we train them in the 6-month process. So they develop the connections, they develop the relationships, and that's the like most exciting part, because when you do go into negotiations, you actually already have the support and the like the relationship that you would want, so that people come together. When we talk about coming together, this is actually coming together to fight for climate justice. So I believe that's one thing we do differently, is actually bringing people together right from the start, and not just at COP, but actually creating that community, sense of community right from the start.
Okay, so for me, I'd say when I started the organization, like I said before, I did not have any class background on environment, but I went ahead and did it. Right now, I have an organization that has more than 300 youths in Kenya, and 99% of them have not studied anything related to the same. So these are the people from my social media platform who would see my post and they will say, I also want to plant a tree, you know, how can I also come with you? And that is how we created our own family that keeps expanding every other day to join us. So what we do differently at COP is we are a family and we are doing the real action on ground. We also have expanded to Tanzania and South Sudan with an aim of just offering climate education to people who find it boring, because for sure the language used in this space can be very tough and very boring for people who are not passionate. So we have to make it simpler for them. We have to make them love and enjoy. We show them the fun part of it. And the most important thing, what we're doing in our country, is we're trying to show people the money-making part of it, because most of the time, and I will speak again for the youth, is that whenever it's a voluntary activity or they need volunteers, they will go for the youths. But when they are paying, when they are giving out paying services, they don't go for the youth. So it's also something that we are doing in my organization, sending that message out that show these young people, show these people the money-making part of conservation, so that they can also stay. And that way we will bring more people on board and we'll leave no one behind. On the question raised by my sister from the back, I think it's a very good point that we actually will all, I believe, in our own spaces, in our own capacity, try to advocate for, so that even our local medias in our own countries reporting about what is happening at COP can also try and consider different groups that are not considered at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. Actually, this question we wanted to ask you, which is why we're gonna shift off to the next session. But I'm just gonna, because I wanted to introduce it there, but since you just asked it, there's this Talanoa dialogue technique that happened at COP23 officially inside, and it was proposed by by the government of Fiji, and which is like kind of having an inclusive dialogue, everybody eye to eye, a round table, and this is what we want to enforce right here. Of course, everybody has their own experiences of being inclusive of other people. That's why we want to take note of what you think. So if we could invite you all to kind of sit in a sharing circle over there. Of course, I will pass it out to you. And yeah, then you could actually like share what you think we could recommend to whoever that we can recommend, how to be inclusive of people. Maybe words, keywords, techniques, art, whatever you think is valid, we will take note of that. So yeah, just after Chiara ends, we will ask you all to please move to the carpet section.
Could I ask you to repeat your question quickly? Oh, sorry. Could I? Yeah.
My question is, what like alternatives do you use in your own organization or in your own communities that are different than the systems that exist within COP? Like, to provide an example of what an alternative could look like.
Okay, yeah. So with Protect Our Future, we do a lot of physical activities, beach cleanups every weekend. The amount of plastic that we have collected has not even done a dent in the problem, yet pounds upon pounds of plastic has been picked up from the beach. So we have members from all over the Caribbean, but it's mainly focused on including our community in the Cayman Islands. Another project that we've been working on recently is getting a reef-safe sunscreen, to get a ban on reef unsafe or not reef-safe sunscreen. So we've been doing a lot of working towards action, but then also education. So we have an environmental education program for our middle schoolers. So that's really just focusing on not only getting, teens involved in the environmental movement, but also kids that are growing up to, take our place as leaders one day, just as we will take places of the people that are speaking here at COP one day.
To follow up from what Kiara was saying, I'm from Barbados, but I actually live in the Cayman Islands, and the movement that Kiara is talking about, Protect Our Future, has actually done an amazing job of shifting culture in the Cayman Islands, where I think it's quite cool and the coolest kids are the ones who are actually environmentalists in Cayman, which I don't think is the same all over the world. So I think Protect Our Future has done an amazing job there. And on that note, I want to thank Act4Food Act4Change for hosting this event. And I'm very excited to move on to the second part, which is going to happen under that tent. So thank you all.